Good evening, and welcome to the 5th installment of Insights powered by Barnard. My name is AJ Ehrenstein, and I'm Dean of Beyond Barnard, the college's hub for advising and resources around careers, internships, competitive fellowships, and applications to graduate and professional school. The first week of the academic year is one of the absolute busiest on our calendar at Beyond Barnard, and I want to thank our staff as we get this event underway, and indeed our colleagues across our campus for their incredible efforts at New Student Orientation Program, or NSOP, last week, and in the earliest days of the academic year. I know we're all so excited to be underway with new and returning students. Part of my job here tonight, as always, is to remind our guests of some housekeeping notes. First, the event is being recorded and will be shared next week. Attendees will not have microphone or camera access during the event. Attendees' voices, likenesses, and images will not be captured by Barnard College. Written submission of questions may be shared during the Q&A portion of the event. And with that in mind, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions in advance. We will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. It's my pleasure, as always, now to introduce the 8th president of Barnard, Sian Leah Beilock. President Beilock has led Barnard since 2017, having served for 12 years at the University of Chicago. She is one of the world's leading experts on the cognitive science behind choking under pressure and performance anxiety, with a focus on math and science for women and girls. She is the author of 2 critically acclaimed books entitled Choke and How the Body Knows Its Mind. Her 2018 TED Talk has been viewed over 2 million times. Please join me in welcoming President Beilock.
Thank you, AJ, and welcome to all of you. I'm so pleased to be here with you this evening. Given that it's the first week of classes here at Barnard, I wanted to start by just reflecting a little bit on our most recent graduates, the class of 2020, and also welcoming the newest addition to the Barnard community, the class of 2024. What's really stood out for me in the conversations with our recent graduates has been their continued pursuit of excellence and what's next. The grit, the determination, really just thinking about new ways of being in what has been totally an unexpected year. It's so wonderful to see so many of them who are already in jobs or in graduate school and really stepping back to think about how they can navigate what has been really unprecedented challenges and help those around them. And I remain so impressed by how they've supported one another and also how they're supporting the new class, the new incoming class. And similarly for the class of 2024 in your first week of school, you are starting at a historic time, both in the history of Barnard and in the history of the country and the world. You're the most selective and most diverse class, and I can't wait to see what you do, how you shape Barnard and how you shape the world in the years to come. We really couldn't be more proud to have you. And thinking about having amazing students and alums around Barnard, I think that's a no better introduction or no better way to introduce our main guest for the night. Let me turn to the introduction of an exceptionally distinguished member of our community, Maria Hinojosa, class of '84. Many of you will know Maria from her work as the more than 20-year veteran host of Latino USA. The show is the longest running Latino-focused program on U.S. public media and has won a Peabody Award. Latino USA is produced by Futuro Media. It's an independent nonprofit organization that Maria actually founded and leads as CEO. And it's committed to producing ethical journalism from a POC perspective and representing the new American mainstream. Futuro Media now also produces America by the Numbers with Maria Hinojosa, a new half-hour television series for PBS that examines how America's growing multicultural population is influencing every aspect of contemporary life. And Maria hosts the show and serves as one of its executive producers. This follows what has been an incredibly distinguished career as a journalist for over 30 years. Maria has reported for PBS, CBS, NBC, CNN, and of course, NPR. She's a former a former senior correspondent for the Emmy Award-winning PBS News magazine Now. And she's won the Overseas Press Club Edward Murrow Award for Best Documentary. At PBS, Maria was the first Latina to anchor a report on Frontline called Lost in Detention, which explored abuse at immigrant detention facilities. And from 1997 to 2005, she was an urban affairs correspondent for CNN, tackling issues of youth violence and the immigrant experience. Her newest book, which I'm excited to talk about tonight, comes out next week, September 15th. It's entitled Once I Was You, a memoir of love and hate in a torn America. Maria has written 2 previous books, Cruise, Gang Members Talk to Maria Hinojosa, and Raising Raul, Adventures in Raising Myself and My Son. Maria is born in Mexico City and raised in Chicago, and we're so proud to have her have graduated magna cum laude in Latin American Studies and Political Economy. I was so proud to welcome Maria back to Barnard, first as a convocation speaker in 2018, and then as the college's inaugural Distinguished Journalist in Residence. It's been fantastic having her on the faculty and teaching the students, and I'm so pleased for Maria to join us here tonight.
It takes a minute. It always takes a minute. Hi, Sian. Hi. Hello to everybody in the Barnard. What a beautiful introduction, Sian. Oh my gosh. Hi.
Thank you so much for being here, and we're so proud to have you as a guest on our Insights series.
I'm so happy to be here. It's a very special day. I taught all day, so I'm kind of brimming with Barnard first day of class energy. It was beautiful.
Oh, good. So we're going to get that post-teaching high that I know a lot about experience. So how have you been? I think it's always an important question to ask, especially in these times. I haven't seen you in person in a while, but how have you been managing over the last 6 months or so?
So here's what's really incredible, Sian. I was teaching, of course, last semester, the winter semester, when all of this started to happen. And then classes, of course, moved into being remote. And suddenly I wasn't feeling so well. And it turned out that I actually had COVID. I didn't know it then because I wouldn't have fit into any of the categories to get a test. I basically just had a low-grade fever for 30 days and had body aches that were extraordinary. And I remember teaching throughout. In fact, my first day back in April in teaching class, I just remember feeling like it was the thing that was going to carry me through. So how am I doing? I'm grateful every day to be here in New York, to be in our community, in our shared neighborhood. You know, our park, Morningside Park, basically, and Central Park saved my life. So I focus a lot on gratitude. And at the same time, I'm working harder than ever. It's kind of incredible. It's hard to believe I'm working harder than ever. I feel very challenged. I think all of us right now in this country we're feeling so many things. We're all in our feelings, actually, and that's okay. That's what I was reminding our students today. So it's a challenging moment, but I'm very, very thankful to be part of the Barnard community and to be here and to be talking about this work together. Yeah, it's great to see you and everybody.
It's interesting what you talk about holding these sort of dual feelings, right? I have a lot of these same experiences. It's a really challenging and uncertain time, and there's a lot to be worried about, but at the same time, being grateful for what we have. And I'm so excited to welcome the students back to campus. And I often just think about the psychology of it. Juggling these multiple ideas and feelings at the same time can be cognitively taxing. Right. And so to make sense of that and to be able to move forward, recognizing that it's a demand.
So here's, you and I haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about what goes on in my classroom because we were supposed to go out. Remember, we had a date.
Yes,
we had a date planned. We had like planned it 6 months ahead. So what I do in my classes, and I'm in the English department, so we're talking about kind of releasing the place where students and myself can feel free to write. And I know the kind of energy that can exist in the first week of school. And so we meditated today.
Great.
That's how we started class. And I think all of my students are a little bit like, what? And I'm like, I'm going to lead you in the meditation because I don't really know how to connect the phone to do that, So I'm going to lead you. And I got super emotional. I was not expecting that because I've led classes through meditation. But I realized that there was a lot of sadness because I'm sad for what we're missing. And usually I'm not the first one who's dropping a tear in my class. I create a space where the students know that they can and that it's non-judgmental, but I'm not usually the first one. But today, and I just acknowledged it. I said, look, this is where I'm at. And I think when we do that as professors and as adults, as fellow human beings, we're saying it's okay. It's okay. Here we are. We're learning. We're going to do deep, incredible stuff. I told them, I said, we're going to be together during one of the most intense periods of history in the United States. We're going to live it together. This is our community. And so, yeah, we have to find a place where we can be in connection with that emotional feeling.
Yeah. So let's turn back a little bit, not to the present time, but also when you started at Barnard. And I read a piece about your new book where you talked about how you ended up at Barnard. And I'd love if you could share a little bit of that story. How did you come to Barnard in 1980?
79.
79.
I took a gap year. That's why my year is 84. So I actually wanted to be an actress. So coming to New York was something that I really thought about. And I've actually never revealed this, but I'm going to say it now because I actually just saw his name in the news. So there's a very famous anthropologist. His name is Marshall Solins from the University of Chicago. At least that's where he was. His daughter and I were best friends. We went to high school together. And his daughter is the one who came to Barnard, and her best friend, Erica Zolberg, and they were the ones who said, come and visit New York. We have a dorm room, come and visit. And, I had applied, I had tried out for an audition for a theater company, and I didn't get it. And that's why I kind of ended up coming to Barnard, and then kind of stumbled into WKCR. That was the only radio station on campus at the time. And that stumbling on, to me, that I just love the feeling of being at Barnard. It was 1979, exactly this week, when we started classes, and then crossing into into Columbia and kind of feeling that other experience. WKCR is a very well-known radio station that has a huge listenership. And that's what started it all in terms of my career. And as you know, Sian, I moved off campus pretty quickly. I was at 616, and then I moved off campus the year because we could do that at Barnard. And then I became somebody very engaged academically at Barnard, but who also challenged Barnard. And I love the fact that we have this deep relationship, even though there were times in my student life where I was taking on the administration. So I always say that to my students. That is the Barnard way. We want you to be independent thinkers and groundbreaking all the way.
Yeah, I mean, to push boundaries, it's pushing boundaries everywhere, not just in select areas. So stumbling on the radio station was one, it sounds like, defining moment. How else did you realize you wanted to be a journalist? What are some other key aspects of your experiences, maybe even Barnard experiences?
Oh my God, sweetie. See, Barnard is central in all of this. And you didn't pay me to say this. You didn't pay. It's in the book. It's actually in the book. And I'm sorry that I have this big thing, but it just arrived in the mail. Simon & Schuster sent this to me. So I'm like, it's got to be everywhere now. I'm just going to carry
it. Has to be everywhere.
Got to carry it around with me everywhere. It's really, really sweet. So, I talk a lot about Latinos and Latinas in particular, the invisibility factor. And what invisibility does when you don't see yourself reflected is that you believe that you're not capable of doing this thing. So even though I was doing WKCR and had an audience and had a show, there were no Latina journalists in the United States that were visible on television. There were none on public radio. And so when it came time for me finally to apply for internships, because I worked throughout college, so finally at the end, I was like, I'm going to squeeze in an internship. And I went to the Career Services office. That's where, all of the internships were set up. And I was going through the internships and I was just like, oh, I could never do this one. ABC News, New York Times, AP, NPR. And I was like, oh, I've never seen anybody like me doing that. So I'm sure I'm not good enough. I'm a Barnard student. And I was like, I'm not good enough. And it was Jane Gould who worked there who said to me, you must apply to that NPR internship. And I said, but I'm not good. She said, you must apply. She was just kind of forceful, like, you can't see what you truly are capable of doing, you must apply. And I got it. And that's how everything changed. So really, and I write about that in the book, because what I'm trying to say is that allyship, as we're talking about this moment in history, and we're talking about being good allies, how can people be good allies in the Black Lives Matter movement or with Latinos and Latinas and immigrants? This is one of the ways, is seeing the talent that we oftentimes, as women of color and as immigrants, don't see in ourselves. And it's one of the great joys that I have as being a professor now.
Yeah. I imagine you get to live that every day.
Every day. And I'm just like, oh my God, of course you've got a future. Oh my God, of course you've got a career. Oh my God, of course. There's so many people who are looking just for you. I have a trans student who is saying, I want to work in children's programming and young adult authors and write. And I was like, there's a market for you. Don't give up. And so that is the beauty of giving it back.
And it's amazing how important and meaningful those sorts of experiences are. I imagine all of us have experiences where someone else believing in us and pushing us really made all the difference. So it's great to hear about that.
It's true.
So let's talk about your new book, Once I Was You. Would you tell us about the title? Where did that come from? And how did you decide to write this book?
So, writing a book, as you know, Sian, is really challenging. I wrote 2 before I had kids, or well, the kids were younger. I actually wrote my second book partly in a dorm room, Brooks, whatever it used to be. I actually was nursing my daughter and then writing a book in the dorms over the summer. That's how I was able to finish. But, book publishing is a really challenging business. And it's a lot of work. So I had taken a lot of time, before the next book. And it was actually 4 years ago, 2016, I was on MSNBC on primetime, and I had a kind of viral moment. I was on with somebody who used the term illegal immigrant. And I said that, there's no such thing as an illegal human being. Illegal is not a noun. I learned that I actually said something like, I didn't learn that from my radical Latino studies professor at Barnard. I learned that from Elie Wiesel, who survived the Holocaust. He said the first thing the Jews were declared by the Nazis were to be illegal and illegal people. And so that went viral. It was seen by 10 million people. And actually the chair of my board said, you need to write this book, Illegal is Not a Noun. And I said, yeah, I could see that, writing a small little book, that you would pick up at the airport and just kind of read, like, Chimamandas, we are all feminists kind of thing. I had to find a new agent. Mine had retired, et cetera, et cetera. And then, and I like to tell this to my students. I said it to them today. I know that you see all of the success, this big poster, my book, but what you don't see is the stuff that came before. So the first proposals that we wrote were rejected. I wanted to write this little book, and the publishing industry was like, we don't want a little book, we want a big book. And so that's kind of the nature of the book. And then the book is really, for me, my favorite blurb is from Gloria Steinem, who basically said this was multiple books in one. It's not just an immigrant story and immigrant history. It's a book about journalism. It's a book about feminism. It's a book about the civil rights era. It's a book about the intersectionality, my best friend being a Black woman, the person who inspires me to be an American, Martin Luther King. So it's all of those things in one. And as you know, Sian, when you're writing a book, you don't start with the title. Sometimes you do, but oftentimes you're not starting with the title. I had written the book. It was done. I had to go back and write the prelude, the introduction. And I wrote about an encounter that I had in the McAllen airport, where I saw a group of children who were being trafficked. These are the children who had been taken away from their parents. and they were now being transported through the airport, and I realized what was happening. And the introduction of the book is this moment where I encounter this little girl, and I'm trying to give her a voice. And what ends up happening in the book, I'm not going to reveal here, but it turns out that actually I could have been one of those children. I didn't realize it, but they did try to take me away from my mother when I arrived in this country. And I didn't realize that until I wrote this book. Kind of all of the connections kind of come. And so the last line is, I want to hear you. I want to hear your story, little girl, because I see you, because once I was you. And we were racking our brains for a title. We could not come up with a title. It was terrible. And then another editor just came in and said, I'm going to read and see what happens. And I love the title. I really do love it.
Wow. Well, I know just even hearing you describe and talk about the introduction, it makes us all so excited to really dive into it. Tell us a little bit, writing a memoir is different than journalism, or is it? How do you think about these different genres, and how should we think about it as a reader?
So for me, when you write a memoir, it's like you can't hold back. You can't write half a memoir. And I think that part of the job of a good editor, and by the way, so 100,000 words were cut out of this book. I just wrote like crazy. I just wrote. I wrote, that was the way my style was. I had an outline, but then I just wrote like crazy, and we cut out 100,000 words. So for me, honesty was the most important thing. And kind of as a writer, really being in the moment. Thankfully, my agent, was like, let's get an outline, because I was very resistant to write an outline. I think I've heard that before. And then I had to be forced basically to write the outline with my editor. And it was the best thing that happened, because then I could just focus on the writing. I didn't have to worry about where it was going, because we knew. So when you get into that space of being very open with yourself, you're not thinking, I'm writing this as a journalist, or what is my family going to think, or how can I write about this? I'm really revealing a lot here. Oh my God. It's like, you can't think about that. You have a good editor who then will come back and say, you know what? Thank you for revealing that, but we actually don't need to know that. Like, there's a thing about there's oversharing, right? So you have to kind of tamp it back. And then my editor, Michelle Herrera Mulligan, who is Mexican-Irish from Chicago, and as you know, I grew up in Chicago, she was really adamant about putting the context of immigration history into people's language. So what I like to say, Sian, is that the book is really tasty. Like, there's a lot of there's juicy behind the scenes stuff. With journalism, I worked for Walter Cronkite. I write about my interaction with Walter Cronkite. I write about interactions with 60 Minutes and with Frontline. I write about those things. But there's also all kinds of juicy other details. And that's part of what you're trying to do. But there's spinach there. Like, it's good for you, spinach, but it's like the best kind of spinach, like, perfect Italian made with a little bit of olive oil, garlic, a little bit of lemon. So you're getting the spinach, but it's tasting really, really yummy.
So you're writing about really sort of heavy topics in a way, or topics that people delve into: immigration policy, race, nationality. Do you think about who you're writing for, who the audience is, what the ideal reader might be, or is that just not part of the focus as you're putting pen to paper?
No, I'm not thinking about the audience at all. I think maybe when you said that, I maybe think often, I actually write about this in the book. I say, other journalists told me how to write news stories, and it's like, it's if you're telling the story to your mother. So it would be like, you're writing an AP story, a breaking news story, and you're like, well, Mom, so what happened is that this guy came into the bank and he had a gun and he decided he was going to hold it up. And so you're just telling the story. I think when you asked that question and I thought about it, I was like, well, probably women. I probably think that maybe I'm thinking because, part of what happens in this book is that, I reveal in a kind of way that I wasn't sure that this was going to happen, that I'm a survivor of rape. I didn't even know that, kind of like a la Christine Blasey Ford, which is when it kind of really comes to the surface. And so I reveal these things. We made choices because that's an important part of the story. How it impacted me as a woman, as somebody, who has a partner now for, 30 years. So I'm very open and honest about that because I'm trying to create community, different kinds of community in the writing of this book. One of the things that ends up happening is I write a lot about my connection experience with the Vietnamese community. And it's like, what's that about? Well, because the first refugee experience that was televised was the Vietnamese experience.
Right. That's really interesting.
And so I remember how journalists that I was watching, because we consumed journalism like crazy in my Mexican immigrant family on the south side of Chicago in Hyde Park. Mainstream media, the New York Times called the Vietnamese refugees boat people. That would be calling like the Central American refugees who are sleeping on the sidewalk in Mexico because they've been forced to by this administration. We'd be calling them concrete people. And then in the end, what happens is I become a journalist and then I do a story about the Vietnamese community and I end up giving them voice. Right. So I'm hoping that, other communities find themselves and see themselves reflected in this book.
And the power of how you reflecting on your own experiences can impact what others see about themselves. And also, I would think about how we view and understand media and what other people are saying.
I'm trying to get people to understand that we have to be critical consumers of the media, that the media sadly is a business. And so there's a lot of stuff that comes up that's really hard. I was doing an interview yesterday with somebody who does work in television, actually Ilia Calderon, who is the Univision anchor, the first Afro-Latina to anchor. And we were talking about a scene in my book where another television reporter says to me, I'm a new television reporter at CNN, and she says, sweetie, let me tell you, the news executives, of course, who are majority men, they've got 20 television sets going on in their office. And they're all going on at the same time, and they're all on mute. So they're not listening to what you're saying. They're looking at how you look. And it was like, oh my God. Wow. So that's when you realize like, wow, okay, all right, well, I gotta, and even then I was like, but I'm still not going to blow out my hair. I'm still going to wear my hoops, and I was taking a risk by doing that. And thank God, it paid off.
So let's talk a little bit more about risk-taking and even some of the emotional toll of doing some of the reporting you do. Like, you have reported from some incredibly difficult places and about incredibly difficult issues. As we think in this time so much about physical health, and oftentimes we don't talk as much about mental health. And, what tools do you use to deal with some of the reporting you've done?
All the tools at my disposal.
What are they?
I'm very, that's why I started the class with meditation. I was not an avid meditator at all. I was resistant to meditation. I would laugh at people who would say, come on, Hinojosa, meditate 10 minutes a day. I'd be like, fat chance. Really, during the 2015 presidential campaign, when I lost my best friend, Cecilia Weissman, may she rest in peace, fellow Barnard graduate, the woman who trained me to be a professor. That was when I started meditating. I was dealing with, not only the Trump administration and the Trump campaign and its rhetoric, but also the pain, the loss, death. And so I meditate every day. As you know, because you follow me on Instagram, where I have
watch you run a lot.
I work out every day. I'm a boxer, and this helps me. I think one of the things I've always been trying to figure out is I'm very petite, as you know, Sian. We make a big joke about this. Actually, when you and I have to take pictures, it's like we have to figure out like the pacing because I'm really small, and so I think like the boxing helps me to feel like strong in general. I focus a lot on gratitude. I, especially now, being a survivor of a pandemic, in a pandemic. And I also give myself time off. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, like today was nonstop. And tomorrow is going to be like, tomorrow I start at 8 o'clock in the morning with an interview with Lourdes Garcia Navarro from NPR, which is going to be the premier interview to launch my book.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yes,
yeah.
It runs. She'll put that story up on Sunday morning. Like that's it. That starts at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And then I've got, so today was the same thing. Starting, worked out from 7 to 8 o'clock. I already had a meeting. And at one point before this, I just laid on my bed. I took out my iPad and I started watching a new series, something that I'm watching on HBO called My Brilliant Friend, the Ella Ferranti. And I was like, nobody would imagine that this is what Maria Hinojosa is doing right now at 5:30 in the afternoon. But this is what I need. I just need to just be here and just like go someplace else. So I don't beat myself up over that. I try, and by the way, I'm type A, I'm, overproducing all the time. So I purposely have to just be like, take it off. It's okay. Disconnect.
Yeah.
Do your plants. But I'm very adamant about taking care of myself. Very adamant.
Yeah, I love what you said about not beating yourself up. I think something that we often forget, especially as strong Barnard women who push, is that self-compassion, right? That it's okay to take a break and not beating yourself up over lying and watching a television show or stepping back, because it's so important to our health. And I think for people who push, we forget to be compassionate and give ourselves a break. We give everyone else a break and push them up and prop them up, and as you do in your classes, but you have to do it for yourself too.
So I'm going to tell you what my assignment was for our students in both classes today, because I know they're all very nervous and this is really hard. And so a lot of what I try to do is just, again, the meditation is to try to get them to just be in their space and to own their power and own their stories. And so I said, I know you guys have a lot of, I also try not to use you guys. So people, I know people that all of you have already a lot of assignments. We're going to do a slow roll into what's going to be a pretty intense semester for us. So your assignment today for next week is I want you to connect in nature for half an hour and then journal about that.
That's great.
And they were like, how do you want that? Do you want it emailed? Do you want it written? Do you want it? And I was like, I want you to connect in nature. However, some of you, because I also have students who are very financially challenged, as you know, that's one of the things we love about Barnard. So I said, some of you may not be able to get to a park. Walk around the block and then just take in the nature and reflect on this first day of class, on the community that we're building. And I said, and it could be free-form writing, please. I'm not, because I know that they're like, I said, required is 1 paragraph. That's it.
Right.
That's all. If it goes further, okay. But I need them to get into a space where they trust their place to trust their voice. And so, yeah, I know that they were very shocked. They're like, that's what the assignment for Maria Hinojosa? Yes.
Yeah, but it's reflected in what you talked about, how after you had an outline, which you fought, to do, it freed you up, right? It was like a cognitive load was taken off you, so you could really focus on the writing. And I hear some of that echoed just in the assignment. It's
absolutely.
Teaching them to free themselves in that way.
Well, look, to be honest with you, and again, this is why I love Barnard. We go deep in my class. We go very, very deep in my class. And so, Sian, you were talking about kind of, the load that I carry. So I share this with my students. I share a lot with my students. I talk a lot about off the record sharing with them. I tell them about the phone calls that I get during class from refugees who are trying to get to this country right now as we speak. Phone calls that I'm getting from, in this case, a trans undocumented Mexican woman who's serving time for a nonviolent offense in a men's prison in Texas. Maximum, because She's a trans woman. So I share with them so that they understand the context. But you know, our students have got really extraordinary backgrounds. I mean, I'm going to share one tidbit. I mean, that's why I love my Barnard students. I really do. They're just so amazing. And my Columbia students too. This young woman, her parents were deported from Canada. Their deportation was from Canada, and they ended up in Mexico. And then they try to get back into the United States. And I'm like, have you ever talked about this? Have you written about this? And she's like, I hated Canada. She's like, I hated Canada because this happened. And her parents were professionals, by the way. Her mother wanted to be a journalist. You know, her father was an engineer. So they're professionals, but they overstayed their visa, whatever, Canada deports them. So that kind of revealing of our story. One of my other students told me that her father works for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. He's a Colombian immigrant, but that because he's with the Sheriff's Department all the time and the way they talk, that he has internalized the self-hatred. And he said to his own daughter, he said, now I know why I'm dumb. It's because I'm an immigrant. And so this student of mine, my Barnard student, is having to deconstruct that and open up a dialogue with her own father about this. So these are the kinds of students that we have.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just so thankful that we connect, that we connect in this way. So again, thank you so much for this extraordinary opportunity and for this great conversation. It's good to see you, Sian.
Yeah, and it's so wonderful. I mean, to have you here as faculty. I know I hear such great things about all your classes, and I know our alums love hearing from you. Let's turn to some questions from our students and alumni, because they've been asking them, and I'd love to pick your brain. So here is one from a current student, Nelva Mendoza Cano, class of 22. She asked, if you had the ability to go back in time to your Barnard years, what would you change? Maybe the classes you took, or activities, or even the institution. What would you think about?
Wow.
It's a good question.
Yeah, nobody's ever asked me that, so I'm just a little bit like. So I think that in terms of Barnard, I don't know, because here's the thing, you know, one of the things that I loved about Barnard was that I was able to be so independent, right? Was that I was able to basically create my own kind of experience, my own academic experience. I mean, I was basically like a triple major, you know, I was able to do that. So I appreciated not necessarily having somebody who was on me, like doing this, checking in on me. And I mean, maybe I had an advisor, but I don't remember using the advisor. So I think the only thing that I would have liked to have had an advisor who said to me, listen, we know it's really hard that you have to wait tables while you are in school. And so we're going to figure out with you how you can do internships while you're doing that. That is the one. If I have a regret, it's only that I wasn't able to experience more internships. And that was because I was working. And I couldn't kind of find the time to make it work. Also, I was busy. By the way, it wasn't just that I was working, waiting tables. I mean, I was the station manager. Well, no, I was the program director at WKCR. You know, I did a 24-hour women's music festival. So I was busy, but I think I would have appreciated somebody saying, do the internship thing a little bit more. That would be the only thing that I would probably change, and that I really stress to my students now, to figure out a way and to use Barnard to help you figure out a way to get those internships in, because they are extraordinary.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing that I know Beyond Barnard has worked a lot on in the last several years, and that we've raised several $1 million for, to help to pay for unfunded internships, so that students aren't having to pick, at least to the same extent, between working and the internship, although there's still more work to do, of course. Yeah. Okay. We have another one from Jenna Madden, who's also class of 22. And Jenna asks, what advice do you have for current Barnard students learning remotely and simultaneously dealing with COVID and all the racialized, genderized, and class impact? Like, this is a big stress, what we're seeing and what we're experiencing personally, and then also remote learning on top of it.
You know, what I do with my classes is we just kind of talk about it. We acknowledge it. We don't pretend like it's not there. I told my students today, I said, look, I'm like you trying to figure out a way to make this interesting. I actually just saw something on, there's a conference, the International Investigative Reporting Conference, and somebody just tweeted out, like, we're really looking forward to the all virtual conference, but also there's going to be a pet parade. And I was like, okay, well maybe I'm going to have my students do a pet parade.
I love that.
You know, just something, or, you know, I was thinking, like, am I going to do a little virtual tour? Like, I'll take the students on a tour, because my house is really cool. I don't know if you can see, like, my husband's artwork is all up there. So, you know, I have a really cool space. So I want to let them see what the space looks like. So here's what I'm saying to you, dear student, is that we have to just acknowledge it. Find classes and professors who are not afraid to kind of be in the spirit and the place of, we don't know everything that's going to happen. We're going to have to live this day by day, but we are living something that is extraordinary, that will make us be united in a way, you know, that we have to kind of put into our calendars. You know, we will be together. This group of people commit to be together in person on this date, you know, in a year, because that's how we're going to celebrate, you know, not being able to see each other for a whole semester. So I just think we have to be honest. This is a very, 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 very scary time. I need to be very clear with you, and we talked about this as well. We want to believe that we live in the world's greatest democracy, but this is being tested right now.
Yeah.
In a very, very profound way. And so, and to talk about issues of race, that's why I create the safe space, because my class is really super diverse. So we need to create that space where we can talk about these different emotions. So just acknowledging it is really a super important part. That's why I told them, you know, that's why, I mean, I ended up crying during my morning meditation. I was like, people, I didn't expect that to happen, but there's a lot going on. So that's the best that we can do. You know, it's what I try to tell my own daughter, who just graduated from Brown, you know, in June, and she's as frustrated as everybody in this generation, just rubbing her back and just like, I know, mamita, I know this is so hard, but we're going to be here tomorrow again. So just not trying to, as we say in Spanish, tapar el sol con un dedo, you know, cover the sun with a finger, but just rather, you know, letting the sun show, and it's complicated.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's something in that sort of embracing the truth, and this is difficult, and that we don't have all the answers, and that all the decisions we're making are not going to be optimal. But we're doing the best with what we have. I think it alleviates some of the stress, or at least has the potential to. Okay, so I have one from a parent, Anna Martinez, who's a parent of the class of 22, and she says, we don't know what we don't know, which I think is very true. What else can parents of first generation college students do to continue to support them on their career journey and the disruption with COVID? Are there things that you've pointed to, or lessons you've learned that can help these parents think about how to support their daughters or their students at this time?
Patience. Patience. If you follow me on social media, and as you know, I'm very public. I mean, I wrote a memoir, you know, I'm very public about these things. And also I like to take stigma away. So I wrote just a couple of weeks ago, I said, well, family, I'm back in therapy. You know, so I want to be very clear about kind of acknowledging how hard this is. And it was my daughter actually who said, Mom, please, actually, I think you need to go back to therapy. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening to my daughter. And my therapist, who is a refugee herself from Argentina and then here in this country, and actually works with trafficked women who are survivors. So she works really intensely. And she's always explained to me, like, especially as a parent, we're like the trees. You know, we are the tree that is going to be bending and flowing with the hurricane and the tornado. And we're going to have to move and adjust and let the tornado kind of come through us. And our kids, our young people, are experiencing multiple emotional, spiritual, political tornadoes. It's so much for them. So just being there, I know it sounds a little, but you know, just kind of being there. So, you know, yesterday my daughter was having a really tough day and I was crazy busy. But she's here, right? I'm here. And so I had, you know, 15 minutes. I just crawled up into her loft bed and I was just kind of rubbing her back, you know, whenever in the middle of, you know, transitioning from one event to another in a room right here, I would walk up and I would just take her, hug her, hold her. So I also want to applaud you for being there already for your first gen student. You don't know how important it is that you are here. I need you to know that I have students who are first gen who, not having experienced here at Barnard, this was more at DePaul in Chicago, where my students would go home to their parents. They were living at home and their parents would not support them for being students. The students would have to go home, feed dad, you know, do the laundry, fold the clothes, help the brother and sister with the homework, and then do her homework. So the fact that you're being here and so supportive and you're asking this question, I want you to know as a parent, you're already like, whoo, light years ahead of many. And we have to be, as parents, also patient with ourselves. That's why it's like, okay, well, I don't have all the answers, but I can hug my daughter. I can be here with her, just lay next to her. And that's it. And that's it. I don't have to say anything. Just be there. And I went to sleep yesterday just kind of feeling like we don't realize how powerful that can be. Like if my mom didn't do that because she was busy. It was 4 kids, you know, I was the youngest, you know, et cetera. But like, what would have happened if mom just kind of laid next to me? It's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, you're talking a lot about just presence as well as being there and in the moment. It's hard. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is from Tanya Gayton, who's a new student, and I think this is amazing to hear. She said she's admired your work for several years, and she actually wrote her essay about you for her Barnard application. So, I mean, I knew that would make that look at your face. I mean, how amazing. She says she's first generation and Mexican and has experienced imposter syndromes and other obstacles in her identity. What advice can you give Latinas for overcoming this feeling, for exercising their voice in the classroom, in the workplace?
So you haven't she hasn't read my book yet. And yet what you don't know is that the imposter syndrome is a big part of this book. I talk about imposter syndrome being my little companion that was always here. In Spanish, mi sombra, my shadow, always with me, the imposter syndrome. And how, and somebody asked me, like, you're such a successful person, you know, you're kind of revealing that you always never felt good enough. And I was like, yeah, because again, I want people to understand that you don't get here just, it's all success. There's tremendous amount of imposter syndrome. So, you know, if you were in my class with you, one of the things, and as you know, Sian, I'm a little dramatic. So I actually, in my class, I strut in front of the class. And I'm usually wearing 5-inch heels because, as you know, I'm short. This is the longest period of time in my life that I've gone without wearing high heels. I mean, because who wears high heels at home? But I tell my students that when they walk into a space, they need to strut. And I'm literally just like, you are strutting into that space and snapping all across because you are, you are the shit. You are that. You have got to convince yourself that you are that. And I talk to my students about, I'm very, you know, I tell them, I mean, this was before Sian, when I was actually going places, you know, I would tell them, oh my God, I was just invited to be in this space. Can you believe it, with these people? And I had no idea what I was doing there, but I acted like 100%. So I try to communicate this to the students, that everybody is insecure, except for maybe the President of the United States. Most everybody else is, well, he is too, actually. The problem is the way he deals with it. But most everybody else is really in touch with that and feeling a little bit insecure. So you're not the only one. And at the same time, for Latinas and for those of us who are, kind of finding our way, we have to be in touch with our humility, because I think our humility is also one of our superpowers. That ability to listen, to not be imposing. Like, that's what I'm trying to teach the students. Like, you have to kind of, it's in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, and jogo de cintura, which means a game of the hips. Right? You're kind of always having to sway. Sometimes you're having to do that, I am all that. And other times you're revealing more of your humble self. So we don't have, I think the message about the book is that I hope you realize that we don't have time for the imposter syndrome anymore. We need you. And then, of course, I say to my students, and by the way, you're here. You're so here. So you so made it. And this place is special, and you are special, and you will have privilege because of this. So now own it in all of its experience.
I love that. And what a way to end, about owning it, and that we need our students now. It's not going to change the world in the future. It's changing it right now. Well, we're so happy to have you at Barnard, Maria. I can't wait till we can have our date again when it's soon. And let me just say how inspired we all are, and how we're looking forward to reading your book. I know so many people are, and we can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much, Sian. And I just am so indebted to you and to Linda, the provost, for seeing me and what I could bring to Barnard. This has been just the most beautiful experience. I really miss my office.
We'll cheer for you when you're ready.
God, I got to get back to my office. I think my little succulent died over there, but I'm so thankful, and I'm so thankful to be a part of the greater Barnard community. And please do stay in touch. As I say to my students, I'm like, you guys, they all have my cell phone. They can all call me and text me. And what I say to them is that don't text me to ask me what an assignment is. That's why I have a TA. But if you need to talk to your professor, to hear your heart and talk you down, I'm here for you. And so I'm so thankful for that opportunity and to share these thoughts with all of you. And thank you to Beyond Barnard, to you, Sian.
Oh, well, I think this all helped us as we move into Friday. So I can't wait to see what your classes reveal this semester. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, President Beilock, and thank you again, Maria Hinojosa. On behalf of the entire Beyond Barnard team, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us tonight. Before closing, I am here to update you on a few important things. So tomorrow is Beyond Barnard's Fall Semester Opportunities Fair, one of the biggest events on our calendar. Since 2018, we've been working to redefine what the traditional college career fair looks like. Our theme for the fall semester is always advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace and graduate school. And we'll kick things off tomorrow morning with a panel of distinguished alumni who are working in this space. We invite all students to sign up and attend. You can do so right in Handshake. As we welcome recruiters from more than 120 different organizations and graduate institutions, it's important to remember that it's impossible to talk about opportunity without also considering what it means to foster a diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environment. I also wanted to offer my thanks to the more than 50 alumni from across class years, majors, and backgrounds who just today participated in virtual group chats about their careers, a great opportunity for mentoring for our students. Our opportunities fairs always include these conversations with alumni, but we were so happy to be able to translate this experience to the virtual space. And as always, we appreciate very deeply the time and energy that alumni take to connect with students. As a reminder, we always encourage alumni and students to sign up for Barnard Connect, our fantastic virtual platform to build connections for mentoring between students and alumni. And if you have questions about Beyond Barnard programs, please don't ever hesitate to contact us at beyondbarnard@barnard.edu. So to our entire community, thanks again for joining. Please join us again October 29th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern for our next conversation with Brenda Darden-Wilkerson, who's President and Chief Executive Officer of Anita B. In the meantime, be safe, and we'll talk soon. Good night.